Welcome to Launch Codes, the podcast about marketing operations, artificial intelligence, and more. Each week, you'll hear from experts as they share insights, stories, and strategies. Welcome to episode 7. I'm your host, Joe Peters. On today's episode, marketers won't let cloudy economy rain on their parade. Second, Marketo's dynamic chat expands its vocabulary. Third, a community question. And in our hot takes, the tribe has spoken and A/B testing effective or egocentric. Today I'm joined by Lauren McCormack. What are you excited about discussing this week, Lauren?
Well, we got a whole table full of stuff to choose from this week. I was pretty excited to talk about the new Mutiny campaign, but also dynamic chat.
All right. Well, let's move into our first topic. Marketers more optimistic even as budgets fall. So there was a CMO study released by Deloitte. And in that study, they just in fall 2023, fairly senior respondent profile, there was optimism for the US economy and that it has increased to 66.7%, up from 57.7% a year ago. This level of optimism is back in line with both pre and post-pandemic highs. And despite renewed optimisms, companies are now spending a smaller portion of their budget on marketing. The report attributes this drop to inflationary pressures. So there's another quote here that I'll do, and then I'll get your takes on it, Lauren. Demonstrating the impact of marketing actions on financial outcomes continues to be the top challenge for marketing leaders. Marketers experience less pressure from CEOs and boards while receiving more scrutiny from CFOs. So, what do you think about this, Lauren? I love that last one on the CFO pressure because we've all felt that from time to time. But what do you think about the optimism?
I love the optimism. I think it's a natural function of revenue. The CFO attention is a natural function of revenue becoming its own discipline. These days, the age of the CRO, I think, is reflected here in that I've always sought for marketing to have a seat at the revenue table, a la Maria Pergolino's CMO leadership over Marketo in like the 2012, 2013 timeframe. But I've been the weird, unique soul that likes leaning into a number. And I think it's interesting that the optimism perhaps is a function of finally owning your financial destiny as a marketer. Instead of waiting for your budget to be handed to you, now we're doing regression analysis and predictive analytics to figure out how far that money's going to go, so that we can control our own destiny to some degree,
Yeah, this challenge is the age-old challenge of marketing, though, is proving your worth. And
that's right.
What is your ROI here? And we know the things that are near and dear to our heart have made an impact there. But what I loved about this is I really do feel like the optimism is truly there compared to last year at this time.
Me too.
Last year at this time, our general feeling that we sort of had was the brakes had been pumped and there was some concern about where we were going economically.
For sure. And watching venture capital just immediately just tighten its belt and completely, reverse course around, LTV and ARR, diminished as even conversation topics into, immediate, ROAS and ROI and profitability, which was an interesting phrase to bring up in Silicon Valley around those
valuations those valuations were out of control.
No, yeah. It was not a topic people wanted to discuss, was profitability. But I think there was definitely a feeling this time last year of kind of standing on the edge of, some kind of big cliff. And I think now that we've kind of navigated what that slope looks like, what the steepness is of the angle and where the bottom looks to be, I think it's a little less mysterious and there's room for optimism now.
Yeah, for sure. This study is super interesting on a variety of different areas. And highly would recommend having a look and digging into some of the data, because we're only touching on a couple of elements. But some additional points of interest that we saw in it was that 60% of respondents started using AI within the last year, which is no surprise to us, especially when it's focused on the content creation and other asset creation. And with personalization in there a little bit as well. And so, for something that was in the field just in early August, late July, this kind of resonates with what we're seeing in terms of people starting to dip their toe in, aren't we, Lauren?
I find it interesting that AI is on the docket, but then the notion of digital marketing transformation, as old and moldy a topic as that is still like, how would you rate your digital marketing transformation? Are we sending who's sending the postcards? Please tell me in the comments. I need to know. It's interesting though. Honestly, when I do meet with different clients and prospects to see the level of adoption, maybe they've got the tech, but are you using it to its potential, or even are you using it to its basic entry point of its capacity, or where are you at? I guess the full transformation is still underway in some organizations, but
for sure, I would say we're probably still in those early days of experimentation.
yeah.
And well, I think that's a great segue into our next topic in terms of experimentation, which is Adobe Marketo's Engage, the new dynamic chat. And I know you've had a chance to look under the hood a little bit here, but last week, Adobe Marketo team released a new set of tutorials for dynamic chat. This follows updates that were released last month that brought in many new free and premium features. And so these features include live chat with sales agents, conversational forms that collect additional lead information to book meetings, and improved analytics and visibility. And then the premium features included Adobe Sensei Gen AI. That's a real tongue twister. Smart list targeting, and then team-based and account-based routing. So what are your first takes on this, Lauren?
So I was an early adopter in the Lighthouse program a couple years ago for dynamic chat, but prior to that was a super big fan of Qualified, and thought their team did a wonderful job building a product. I think the most interesting part of the Qualified story to me was that they were Salesforce developers gone, web chat leadership, right? So they made sure everything baked in really nicely to CRM. What the interesting proposition I think here is from Adobe is that your chat's going to be naturally an extension of your marketing automation platform. I like the fact that they're catching up to some of the feature functionality that Qualified had that I missed when I was a Lighthouse kind of early adopter. It was cool that I had it for free, just native in my marketing automation. Certainly made it easier to justify standing up a tool. Well, it definitely opens a door for a lot of support requests, for a lot of noise. If you're not careful in the way that you help people choose their own adventure with your chatbot. And we didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know what kind of volume we would see. We knew based on Google Analytics what our site volume looked like, and we had an idea of the pages that we could test on that would be maybe less traffic to ease into the world of the chat. But what's super interesting to me is now the Adobe product has the drop your coffee alert. So basically, if you've got a target prospect, that's what they called it at Qualified, was the drop your coffee alert. If you have a target account and your primary decision maker happens to be kicking around on your website and fills out a chat form, then the rep, the AE who's responsible for that relationship, will get a notification and can jump right in. And instead of serve, the canned responses or have the BDR field this really, high value interaction, you can have the person most the closest to the knowledge of the account and right there in the conversation, which is pretty cool. The generative AI is interesting. I think that's cool too. But Joe, I know you've got some pretty high standards for what you want to see.
Well, yeah, I think Adobe has a lot of work to catch up here in terms of where they're at with Marketo and where, say, HubSpot is with their ChatSpot, dynamic chat elements within the HubSpot platform. I think what we're seeing here is some movement, and hopefully it's continued moving in the direction here. But you're not training an AI on your marketing information or your sales information. It's not going to be responding based on your knowledge resources. It's really going to be back into those workflow things that are not. These are old approaches to some of these challenges and aren't really advancing where things can and probably should be today.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you can have AI help your BDR have a better conversation, though. So Marketo used the example, of its own drinking its own champagne and having a BDR on a chat with a healthcare prospect, and having the healthcare prospect ask if Marketo was HIPAA compliant, right? And maybe the BDR doesn't even quite know what HIPAA is, but the generative AI sure does and can tell you what you need to know so that you can give the right information to your prospect, or about canned spam, or any kind of compliance, or integration with CRMs other than maybe Salesforce. Maybe they've never heard of MS Dynamics, but AI is able to help direct the answer to the question, which is pretty handy.
Yeah, and I think, I like to see the progress, so that's important. But I think it's a long way from HubSpot's claim of saying it can respond to about 76% of all inquiries, which is a huge number, right? So anyway, we'll see what happens here, and hopefully there's more news to come in the weeks and months ahead. And hopefully there's a little bit of love taken away from some of the real creative investments that Adobe has been making with Firefly, and maybe giving a little bit of love to some of the other platforms in terms of the generative capabilities. But all right, well, let's slide into our community question for this week. And the question that we have from MoPros is, I took over a 2-person RevOps team. How do we prioritize an intake? How we prioritize an intake feels broken. How do you prioritize the entire workload and structure your teams day to day?
It's a great question. I've been in those shoes before. I was the second hire in our marketing ops team at one point for a Bay Area tech company. And the gentleman that brought me on board, kindest soul, said yes to everything and had a graveyard of a Trello board. And I came in and I looked at it and I said, what are we doing here? Where do I start? Some of this stuff is 3 or 4 years old. And he's like, oh, we just put stuff there to make people feel better about the requests. Wow. I don't even remember what some of this stuff is. And so we took the org from that state of affairs into a situation where it was automated to the point of giving field marketers and product marketers and anybody in the extended marketing team that required a request, we gave them a form, and it went and used iPass, right, to populate tokens in Marketo program templates. Then we had another piece of tech that would generate a draft outside of the platform so no one could accidentally spam our 3 million people in our database. But it would send a draft to the stakeholders responsible, and if they wanted to change their quotation or adjust a title or put an M dash in somewhere, we didn't have to fuss with it. But when they reviewed and approved it. It would go through a necessary review and approval chain outside of the platform, come back to us, ready for us to give the final okay, pop it with the click of a button into the template. And at the end of my tenure there, we would joke, this gentleman and I, that we were automating him out of a job because we had everything down to a fine art, really. But at the beginning, I think it's easy to dream like that and think about what you could do with infrastructure and tech to really get things automated. In the beginning, I think it's just sensibility around what you accept, like what standards you
how do
set.
you do your prioritization, or what are your guiding principles?
So level set expectations and expect people to come to you fully prepared with the necessary elements for the campaign. Don't allow what I call random acts of slacking,
Yeah.
drive-by slackings. Don't let people give you fractured information. Have them hang on to it until it's fully baked and ready, and make sure that there's training and enablement set up around SLAs and around requirements gathering so that people come to you with less ideas and more campaigns, right? The ideas are wonderful and you want to be at the table for their creation and their inception and their definition. But sitting in a meeting and kicking around ideas is not the same as handing off a project.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would count as handing off a project in development terms, for your development team. So why does it for marketers? Like, why are we okay with, fractured bits of and pieces of information coming to us over time? I think making sure that it's understood that this is a shared responsibility, I think is really essential.
Yeah,
But
that area of the roles and responsibility, and really you can often rely on process to support
that's
you
right.
when you're not really equipped to take on the scale and demand that exists within the organization. But if you can rely on the process, then you can meet the incoming requests in a flow and in a queue that is fair and transparent
That's
to
right.
those that you're helping out.
And then if you're RevOps, pivot from what's happening. It's a concept that it goes back to my days in solution selling. It's called Nihito. Nothing important happens in the office, and that wasn't a precursor for COVID and work from home or anything. It's just saying that what matters is what happens outside of your office. So release notes are great, feature functionality updates are wonderful, but those things aren't what keep your prospects and your clients up at night. Right. So talking about yourself and using your internal jargon around, what you're developing and what you're creating and what you're putting out into the universe really takes a back seat in importance to how you're communicating with people on the other end of your campaigns, right? How human, how authentic. Like, are you submitting to the requests of your org because you've always sent out 4 newsletters a month and did 6 webinars? How does that feel on the other side of the inbox, on the other side of the campaign? Is it just too much? And is it delivering value to them? And when you stop and look at it through the receiver's eyes instead of the sender's, I think that shift will help you really backload and define your capacity around what story you're trying to tell, like how you're trying to compel an audience of human beings instead of just throwing campaigns out the door at anyone's and everyone's request.
Mm-hmm.
You got to
Yeah,
put some
I think
sensibility around it.
when you're seeing that with adding value for your internal team members or internal clients, but also adding value for the recipient is really the key to being successful in our business. But
That's right.
all right, well, let's thank our sponsors, NAC, today. Thanks to our friends at NAC for sponsoring today's episode. NAC is the no-code platform that allows you to build campaigns in minutes, get perfectly rendered emails and landing pages without ever having to touch a line of code. Visit knack.com to learn more. That's KNAK.com. All right, so let's move into our hot takes. And I know there's a couple here that we're excited about. There's a Survivor campaign by Mutiny. Now, the way they spell it and the way I'm saying it, there's a little bit of a distinction. So they're spelling Survivor Surv-AI-vor. So Surv-AI-vor, I guess, is the horrible way of saying it. But Survivor by Mutiny is a new thing that's come up, and it's premiering this week. It's a 3-week game involving workshops to learn AI workflows. So there are 9 episodes for demand gen, SEO, content, strategy, and they have speakers from OpenAI, HubSpot, and Autodesk. And by attending the workshops and getting engaged, you earn points. And then each week they have some prizes with a 10K grand prize. So there was this great comment on LinkedIn that I thought really summed it up. I don't often find myself envious of a B2B marketing campaign because honestly, most are crap. That said, I really love what Mutiny is doing with their Survivor campaign and contest. First, they're giving away B2C type money, 10K, which always motivates people. And second, they are teaching marketers something incredibly valuable, how to leverage AI in their jobs. What do you think about this, Lauren?
So I'm a huge fan. And I, rather than trying to figure out how to pronounce it, I just call it that Mutiny Survivor campaign. It's less taxing on the brain. But I was fortunate enough to participate on Friday in a growth marketing open call with Ryan, who's the head of marketing at Mutiny, Alina from Chili Piper, and about 70 other folks globally. And we all just sat down and talked shop around campaigns that are under construction or in flight. It was a super call, and it was awesome that Ryan was able to share a little bit of what he's doing over at the Mutiny side of the house. And then it was like the floodgates after the call had opened, and suddenly I had SDRs and Ryan himself in my inbox hyping up this campaign, and everywhere I looked, even on like Clearbit, friends of mine were posting about it, and it went from 0 to 60 pretty quick on my radar. But I was able to log into the platform and look at the gamification structure and kind of interact. And they even had a point system for uploading your AI enhanced headshot. So of course that was fun for me to get started. But yeah, no, just really enjoying it, and loved giving feedback firsthand to the head of marketing over at Mutiny. Super enthused to see what this week holds. He even had a note in my inbox this morning, which love the direct line of contact. I think marketing works best when it's one to many, but it feels one to one, and this certainly achieves that. The payoff is there in the gamification, the delight. It's so hard as a marketer to create delight in your prospects, but this is doing it. So very, very happy to see this campaign.
Well, it goes back to what Matt Tonkin and I were talking about a couple of weeks ago, about this idea of this hierarchy of content and campaigns, and that innovative, hyper creative stuff really breaks through. And the Me Too kind of, I can do this following, it's not going to generate the excitement or that just general, I'm going to say, boring content isn't going to resonate with communities or target audiences. So it immediately captured my interest, and and I know it captured yours, and that's the sign of a great campaign, and you're doing great stuff. So
yeah.
I'm sure we're going to see a million copycats of this now.
That's right. But what's interesting here, I think, to me, is that Mutiny is all about web personalization. And they're drinking some of their own champagne here. They're showing us what the benefits of personalized experiences can bring to your pipeline. I'm going to be interested to hear in these future growth calls, which, by the way, are open to anyone that might like to join. I think if you go to Alina's LinkedIn, you'll find the details. I'll be interested to hear the revenue story, like how much pipeline this drives and how many conversations this gets started for them. Have always been a fan of their platform and love seeing AI and personalization pushing forward. Right?
Yeah, the two thumbs up on this campaign. And
Agreed.
regardless of actually how it performs, the buzz is enough of an indicator of what a great campaign it is. So
I think it's going to have a great revenue story.
yeah, 100%. Well, let's move into the second hot take section, which is there a value to A/B testing? So this question sort of come up in a series of comments and tweets from Kerry Saarinen, the CEO of Linear, and he said first in an interview that they never do A/B tests. We don't do A/B tests. We validate ideas and assumptions that are driven by taste and opinions, rather than the other way around where tests drive decisions. And he sort of clarified it later. The main problem is that A/B tests are almost always driven by internal incentives versus user needs. So I kind of think he's said what we've all known and felt for a long while, that sometimes an A/B test can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. But Lauren, what are you thinking? Because I know you've spent some quality time on the A/B testing train in your career.
Many a moon. I'm looking at the Linear site and thinking about the stuff that I'd suggest to him to A/B test. But no, I can appreciate that there's a confirmation bias inherent sometimes, or a people pleasing component to having two stakeholders arguing over, it should be green, it should be blue, and okay, let's just split test and get this over with, right? But conversion optimization, to abandon it full stop, to say that, oh, it's ego, we're not going to do that, is discounting the science.
Yeah.
And discounting the right of the users to vote with their clicks and their feet, so to speak. Like, you're not going to delight your site visitors if you're not willing to update, refresh, and continually enhance their experience. So I'm going to agree to disagree here with that take.
I think what he's touched upon is a very narrow part of the experience, or maybe his experience, but not necessarily, I'm going to say, the science into going beyond your gut and assuming that what your gut is telling you is what's going to perform best. So I'm with you on this one, that I don't think that it's an ego-driven approach, that it's kind of a science behind optimization. And why wouldn't you want to do that?
It's hypothesis. It's just like the scientific method. You have a hypothesis and you put it through its paces to test it, to see if it's valid or not. And I've spent a few years doing nothing but optimization tests on direct response websites. And my COO and I desperately wanted other colors to convert better than Microsoft Reflex Blue. We really, really wanted some variety in our day. But lo and behold, we were hard pressed to get any other palette to really drive that Zoom, or Safari Blue is that color for a reason. But that doesn't mean to say that demographically that couldn't be a different outcome for other demographics outside of tech, or it's always worth a test, I think, is more my mantra than it's never worth a test.
Yeah. Well, it was a thought-provoking statement, and we're not sure we're going to validate it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But let's move on. And I feel like this episode has just flown by today. But
me too. Yeah, it's a fun one.
Yeah, into our pairings section. And this week we have a singer that I love. His name is Father John Misty.
Oh, goodness.
And
how cool.
His latest album is Chloe in the Next 20th Century. Now, he is quite the character, but he's put out this beautiful blue vinyl album, double album. It seems like you know who I'm talking about with Father John, and he has a voice that's kind of stolen the DNA of a crooner from the 60s, I kind of feel. And he has a great voice. And funny enough, his career started as a drummer for the Fleet Foxes, but to be fair, everyone in Fleet Foxes sings, so including the drummer. So that's where his roots are. But now he's put out, I'm going to say 4 or 5 LPs since that time. Our track this week is fittingly Q4. And so a lot of his songs are just
well done.
Really statements on life and business, and he definitely is a philosopher and a poet at the same time. So Q4 is a great song, and now that we're 1 month in and have 2 to go, I thought that was the perfect track for this episode of Launch Codes. Now, what are we pairing Father John Misty with this week?
I feel like he would approve. We've got some honey Dominican Republic coffee from Surv-AI. Surv-AI is family owned here in Tucson. What's interesting about this particular coffee shop, the founder, when he moved to Tucson, his family had been in business roasting coffee since the 1500s.
What?
Yeah, they can trace back European roots of coffee roasting to the 1500s for this particular family. So it was the first coffee shop that happened to be located right by the school my kids go to and the little apartment complex that we rented in when we moved to Tucson. So it's an adorable little space that we spent a lot of time in. So lots of good memories. It's a graham cracker, milk chocolate, and honey, which I think sounds a little decadent and like a perfect fit for Father John Misty, I think.
Sounds almost like s'more-ish for breakfast, but
it's not too heavy-handed, but you can get all those notes very easily.
Delicious. Well, thanks, Lauren. Sounds. I feel like we're going to have to create some kind of trade, U.S. trade, Canada trade treaty here to allow us to have the flow of some of this coffee up through the border, so I can have it on some of the mornings that we do Launch Codes. But
that sounds nice. I know it is the one thing that will get your suitcase searched. Like I often try and bring coffee home, and they've always told me that if you travel with coffee, it looks suspicious, and they'll always pull your bag. So
I think that's from the old Eddie Murphy Beverly Hills Cop.
Maybe
everything in the coffee cases. So
that's
maybe
right.
people going back think that they're going to throw off the scent of the dogs that way, but
mine's just coffee. It's not that exciting. It just makes for a delay for the poor people behind me, but oh well.
Yeah, buddy. Well, thank you, Lauren, and thanks to everyone for listening to this week's version of Launch Codes. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Stay connected with us on LinkedIn or by joining our newsletter using the link in the description. And as always, thanks, Mom, for watching. Have a great week, everyone.
Take care, everybody.